So, scientists predict that people will stop having red hair in the next 100 years because it's a recessive trait. In other words, gingers are becoming a rare species. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if I was crazy into gingers, I'd know that I only have about 100 years to go and smash them all. Anyways, we have a podcast to do. Let's hit it.
Welcome back to Battle of the Sexes.
Now, normally I'd be like head over heels on this whole thing and be thinking about how I'm gonna get myself and I a ginger. But the way I'm seeing it, I'm not really into gingers because I haven't seen myself like a super thick ginger I can want to smash. But anyways, that is my own personal preference. For those of y'all that have just joined in, welcome to Break Time on West Side, your number one break time podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is none other than the same guy who's been there the entire time, Sir Denver B. And this episode is a bit contradictory in a sense. But before I do get to that, I do need to go back to the previous Battle of the Sexes, where I talked about body shaming and dick shaming. Now, I kind of did give quite a bit of 2 cents, and I tried to speak about it from the guy's point of view, but I feel as though a lot of the people that listened sort of didn't take it the right way, especially the ladies. And some of you all hit me up and you spoke about your experiences and the fact that there's guys that have been doing it for a hell of a lot longer. And here's the thing. Over the weekend, I was listening to a clip from the Brilliant Idiots podcast. Mad shout out to Brilliant Idiots podcast, hosted by Charlemagne the God and Andrew Scholes. And Charlemagne actually described body shaming on both ends in a very interesting way. Now, he said that for us as people, we only really take offense. We have a problem with people judging our bodies when it's negative. Like, we don't mind when we're being complimented, when someone's saying nice ass and you like such a compliment, or someone saying that you're looking buffed up, or you look a certain way, or you're really smelling nice and you look a certain way. People have this thing where they believe that, it's just perfectly okay for you as a guy and also as a girl to be okay with a compliment. So if someone's tossing out like negative criticism on your body, then that's when people start to have a problem. And by all means, he was right. And he also did mention that it's not like it's an entirely good or bad thing. It's just something that we have in us as a species, because when we're trying to look for the right mate and all, we tend to judge people. We'll use judgment as a way to filter through a bunch of different people so that we can get to someone that we would probably want or someone that we probably like. And bodies is something that people are judged on, even when it goes to like things like modeling, basketball, when it goes to even things like picking up in a sugarcane plantation in Hawaii. Like, it's almost a science for some people, but it's a really bad thing when it comes from a negative perspective. So I will say this probably because in a sense, it sounds like I'm going back and forth on it. Do I have a problem with body shaming? Yes. And it's because it's just negativity. But in and of itself, it's something that happens to everyone. It's not like it's particularly just on women or a certain type of woman or a certain type of guy. Fat guys, skinny guys, everyone gets body shamed. And we just need to be a little bit more respectful of people. You can negatively criticize someone. It doesn't mean that you have to go and slam it onto their face or on their Twitter feed and cyberbully them and shit like that. Anyways, I am done with that bit and I probably should continue because this episode is a little bit of a contradiction of another episode. But I'm gonna get to why it is in a bit. So about 3-4 weeks ago, actually, Battle of the Sexes episode 30 to be specific, I did the episode on marriage, and the entire talk of it was making marriage great again. And the entire premise around it was how the marriage system had been corrupted and it's been ruined by the current generation of people. And also the past like 1 or 2 generations have sort of not made it that conducive for us to want to get married. And it got quite a bit of listenership. Quite a number of people expressed their feelings on the entire thing. But then again, it did bring about this entire topic of, Denver, when are you going to get married? But this is something that may not necessarily occur to you, blah, blah, blah. And a bunch of people started asking me if I'm going to get married. So I figured I might as well answer this question while I'm on the mic. And here's the thing. Just like the title says, I do not intend on getting married anytime soon. I'm being completely honest about that. Now, I have a bunch of reasons why, and most of them are personal, but to be quite honest, I think back to the older days, the days when we were kids and we used to look up to our parents, and parenting looked like it was this powerful job. It was this really, really amazing title because you get to control a bunch of things. You can own a house, you own a bunch of cars, you get to work and you make money and you can move around whenever you felt like. Plus, I don't know, I think enough of us were fed, or in some sense consumed, a fuck ton of fairy tale novels, read too many love stories, watched a fuck ton of Hollywood and just regular TV shows that pushed for love and marriage and the idea of happily ever after. And it sort of got ingrained in us, and us includes me, that you get married and you live happily ever after. But quick fun fact, the people that started using happily ever after usually used to refer to death, but that's a slightly morbid fun fact that I'll leave out. When I sit back and I look to those days, like, marriage seemed like such a good thing. Plus, if I had a crush on a girl when I was a kid, I'd probably think of myself getting married to her. And I was like, I bet it would be super fun. But as you grow older and older, you really start to rethink the whole idea of marriage. And I'm not gonna lie, when I was in my teens and I was thinking to myself, if I'm gonna get married, like, when am I gonna get married? And I had sort of concluded, probably when I'm about 26, 27 there, but ideally between 25 and 27, I should be getting married. I'll get a girlfriend, we'll date for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, and then I'll pop the ring, it'll probably go right, and I'll get married. But after high school, I started to learn a little bit more about the world. I started to get a little bit more exposed. I started working, so I started talking to people who were married. I started sitting down and listening to people talk about their marriage problems, the issues with having a wife. And to be quite honest, by the time I was joining university, I was like, you know what? I might just get married by the age of, I don't know, maybe 27 to 29, or maybe by like 30 I should be married. And then uni happened, and then my 20s had kicked in, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm like, am I really going to get married? Because everything has changed. Like, my entire outlook on it has changed, because there's a lot of things that come with marriage that have started being, I don't want to say vandalized or broken into, but it's not like marriage is very alluring right now, because there's the entire idea of the nagging wife, of which it doesn't mean that every wife will be a nag, but it's like, I'll be under oversight. There's only so much I can do. When I'm a married man, I won't have as much freedom, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And it looks like I'm just arguing from a single point of view, but just bear with me on this. Marriage right now is losing its relevance in society. Like, the institution of marriage is losing its relevance. It's losing its purity. It's become so corrupted and screwed over that even getting married doesn't look like such a big issue. As in, it feels like me getting married, if it were to happen, would be more of a matter of just moving up the societal ladder and fulfilling a cultural promise, or more like a cultural step in my life. Because obviously at some point in your life, especially if you're from an African background, you'll have this point in time where you're making good money, and then you will be asked to either get married or probably start having kids if your parents are pretty okay with you not being necessarily married. And the entire institution of marriage, like, I'm not gonna lie, it still has its merits on some level, but what I'm trying to say is it's not as relevant, because when you look at some of the perks of marriage, and this shit used to look so good back when we were kids, because the dating process used to look like it was so good, courtship looked like it was magical, then marriage was like the next step, and it felt like that was when happily ever after started. But the thing is, I'm not even gonna lie. Right now, it looks like happily ever after usually ends the minute you decide to get married. Because all manner of things can go wrong. And I'm saying this from a guy's perspective. So a couple of the perks that marriage had. You were free to have sex. You can produce children. Which, well, it's more of hand in hand with the first bit, but you can get why it needs to be separated. Also, you would get recognized in the community. You have a support system that is close to you. Also, studies have shown that the fact that you have someone that you love sleeping right next to you in bed actually does reduce stress and reduces the ability for you to get depression. But that's if they're not the ones that are causing you that same stress, or at least are gaslighting the situation to the point where you might get into depression. But you look at it right now, what exactly is marriage carrying? Because if it's the sex, people have been doing it outside wedlock. People have been cheating. People don't look like they are going to start doing it when they get married. Nowadays, we have to make sure that, you can do it well before you get married. So is there really a use for me to get married? When you look at kids, the marriage institution has been corrupted. It's been broken up so many times by so many different people in their own circles and so on, that it's become socially acceptable to not be married but still have kids. The entire idea of having a baby mama and a baby daddy is becoming a little more commonplace. Part of the reason why I did the episode, Make Marriage Great Again. When you look at the societal ladder, it's not even being built that much of whether you're married or not. Fine, yes, people will obviously make fun of the woman who isn't married by a certain age, even though nowadays they'll do it more in whispers. And even that's been combated by the feminist movement, the hashtag women empowerment, the hashtag men are trash movement. They've pretty much counteracted all of that. So even women that choose to not get married are in some way, shape and form also joining a community that can continue to move along and live quite normally and have quite a bit of support. Now, as a guy, even I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about it. The support system that's supposedly supposed to be there, maybe it's just the fact that most of the publicized marriages aren't very good ones. The ones that have the domestic issues, the ones that carry all the problems, the ones that always end up in divorce. Maybe it's because all of those types are the ones that are publicized more and more in the media. But I'm looking at it and I'm like, what if that's an inevitability that's happening nowadays? And especially now, the cons of marriage are even worse because now you're not even sure of each other. Nowadays, trust has become such a huge commodity. It's become so hard for people to trust each other. It's become very hard to say that a lot of people are faithful nowadays because, as much as it's been said that she belongs to the streets, he belongs to the streets as well. Like, the streets is both sides of the coin. The streets has had more and more people, and some of them aren't ready to leave the streets behind and actually become a more faithful partner and individual. You choose to marry someone just because of how good it looks. People are getting married nowadays just because it's a cultural thing. I don't see as many people nowadays who really want to get married because they genuinely see a future and it's a step that they personally want to take. It seems more community, family, and socially driven. So what good is that if you're not going to be happy? And even when it comes to like the kid situation, fine, yes, you can have baby mamas and baby daddies, but you're not even sure that that kid is yours. Because just the way my mother said it, the only person who knows that their child is theirs is the mother who gave birth to that child. Besides that, it can be anyone's child for all we know. There's been jokes online, especially during this period of time, that my husband suddenly realized that our child looks like the gardener a little bit more. And when that sort of statement comes out, it kind of gives you a pretty good impression of where problems are. Because you're not even sure the kid is yours. There's guys that are getting duped day in, day out to take care of kids that aren't even theirs. I'll even see if I can sample Kanye West's verse from Gold Digger, which actually talks about this real quick. I even found it. Here it is.
18 years, and on her 18th birthday found out it wasn't his.
Exactly. And when you look at the fact that that kid might not be yours, the love that you might have believed is being reciprocated is just a desire for one thing or another, it becomes very hard to trust the institution of marriage. When you look at the cons of marriage, and I'm gonna just state the cons of marriage as a man. Firstly, as a man, when you are getting married, you're pretty much placing a bet. And on that bet, you're saying this. You're like, I bet you half of every single fucking thing I own. Everything. Like literally top to bottom. All the assets I own. Every car, every house, everything that I own. I'm betting 50% of everything that I can stay with you forever and we won't break this bond that we have. Now, to be quite honest, it's very hard to make such a bet and then really live up to it. And a lot of times people haven't lived up to it. You know, Adele's divorce is a pretty good case study, but that one was sort of flipping the script in a sense. The coin ended up landing on the wrong side and Adele ended up being told she's the one to pay. But you realize that as a guy, you're only ever useful in the marriage if you are providing. And that's become a problem for a lot of guys, because the minute you find the man of the house has been laid off, you find that the man of the house is struggling or isn't doing very well per se, you find that a lot of them get ostracized, a lot of them get mistreated by their wives, will get talked down to, they will be looked down upon by their significant other because they're unable to provide. And I'm not saying that it's bad for men to know that they are required to be the providers of the house, but we need to acknowledge that reality and ideals is two different sides of the playing field. It can't always be the same both ways. As we Kenyans like to say, on the ground, things are pretty different. And I look at it in a sense that when you look at, there was this thing that Chris Rock said at a stand-up about men and their love being based off of their provision. Here it is.
Only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. A man is only loved under the condition that he provides something. Okay? I've never heard a woman in my life say, you know, after he got laid off, we got so much closer. No. I once heard my grandmother say, a broke man is like a broke hand. Can't do nothing with it. What kind of gangster shit is that? That's right. Women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally.
So when you see that for you as a guy, your requirement to being married is societal pressure. You are not entirely sure that the kid is yours. You're not entirely sure that your wife will be faithful to you, assuming that you will be faithful yourself as a man. And then there's a good chance that you could lose half of your shit if anything goes wrong and the both of you all decide to split. And in addition to that, your ability to be loved, your worth in that household is entirely based off of your ability to provide. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't seem very, very convincing for me to want to get married right now. But the question is, am I willing to get married at some point in the future? And is there a way to make marriage worthwhile? Well, yeah. Firstly, we need to fix our social system. And I know this is sort of an ideal scenario, but the way I see it, we fix our social system. If we can find a way to make marriage seem like a really good thing, like make marriage sexy again, make marriage great again, sort of the same way our parents were made to believe back in the day, back in like 2, 3, 4 generations back, they idolized the idea of marriage. Marriage was a stage in life that they would look forward to. But right now, it looks more like a crutch than anything else. So the way I see it, not unless if we can find a way to make marriage great again, I don't see myself getting married anytime soon. Anyways, I want to know what you think. Hit us up on the Instagram handle at Breaktime on Westside. On Twitter, you can hit me up at Bagaka the D. The B and the D are capital. I will see you guys later. Take care. And then imagine after all of that shit, you realize that the kid ain't yours after 18 years of child support. Like, nah, nigga, I ain't ready for that shit. Like, damn, I'm getting a DNA test the minute that child gets born.